Illinois might be as well known for their offensive rebounding as any team in the country. I guess what goes into out rebounding them in that category?
You talking about last night, Illinois? Yeah, I mean, I thought we did a good job of obviously meeting them, not underneath the rim and not in the charge circle. We were initiated contact for the most part, and it took a group effort. It's not always just your big guys. We had other guys that came in and cleaned up some batted balls and tip balls, and it was just that's an effort. Rebounding is still an effort category. You can in those situations, and you get to this level, you can throw. Technique is great to talk about, but you can really kind of throw that out the window when it comes point in time. It's really, what's underneath the hood, and in terms of the desire and the want to make sure you minimize how many second shots they get, because not only do they get a lot of offensive rebounds, but their conversion rate is astronomical. I think they were at .72 in terms of points per possession after an offensive rebound. I think we're second at .49 in the league, and the team we got coming in here Friday is really good at that too, and they're .43. But it's just not only the amount they get, it's that they convert. And so how do you keep them from converting? Don't let them get them, right? And so that was, but they also shot 50-some percent, so it wasn't like there was a lot of misses, so or an extraordinary amount of misses.
Speaking of down low, for you to have an advantage in points in the paint over, probably one of the biggest teams in the country, kind of where do you feel like you guys have grown from kind of the physicality standpoint to be able to have that advantage?
Well, most of those came from Gard's dribble penetration. It wasn't like we were, playing mano a mano, backing down in the post and playing big on big. It was dribble penetration, those things, whether it was Nick, JB, Rhodey, that we're able to get there. And that's the benefit of having bigs that shoot it. You can stretch the defense a little bit more and allows bigger driving gaps and driving lines and lanes. And I still thought we left a lot of food on the table in terms of missed layups. At one point I looked at the shot chart in the second half. We were 1 for 7 in the paint. I think we finished 7 for. We started converting then late, but I mean it's a product of the people you have on the floor, and hopefully your spacing and the effect of the spacing creates opportunities to be able to get to the rim.
Coach, yesterday after the game, when talked about the defensive improvement over the last month or so, JB talked about the scout. A couple of players have mentioned that. Wanted to ask maybe last 10, 12 hours or so, what's gone into the process of reflecting from the last game, moving on, and kind of now preparing for Michigan State? What goes into that scout process?
Well, my staff does a phenomenal job, and we changed some things early in the year in terms of the process and tried to streamline the whole process a little bit better, and broke down responsibilities within the scout preparation to different coaches, and then ultimately it all streamlined to Coach Krabanoff, and he does the final presentation. But between Lance and Brad and Sharif and Joe, obviously, all having different components of that preparation, and then kind of a chain of command, so to speak, we felt we needed to clean up the communication process better and streamline it more. And Brad, he probably have to have cataract surgery or something at the end of the year. He watches so much film. It's I guess you can, when you have a 1-year-old, you're probably up at night and so his sleep pattern isn't normal. But he's done a great job they've all done a great job of working in advance, and I operate a day at a time, a game at a time. So that's helped, and I think the streamlining of the communication has helped, and they've all put their heads together to continue to come to me with how we want to adjust game plans from player to player and game to game. So it took a little while for us to kind of get it up and really rolling in the right direction, but I think it's made us much more efficient and much more effective.
Greg, what does a win like last night, and I guess maybe even the Michigan game, do for guys mentally? Do you notice it? Do you notice like more confidence? Do you notice anything coming out of games like that?
Yeah, I think they've proven now to themselves, and I can give them word confidence, and I can speak confidence into them for only so much, and then ultimately you have to go do it and gain real confidence and sustained confidence through performing on the floor yourself as a player, and that's they understand now how good a team we are, and what it takes for us to stay at that level. And I think our ability to compete and how we battle has been the biggest thing that has changed over the last 60, since November, early December, and then we went through some times where we didn't compete and not as consistently at as a high level that we do now. And I think the other thing with that understanding of that we had to get mentally tougher, and we have, and I think that allows us to. They've done a really good job of embracing and growing the next play mentality, probably even better than I do. They're able to move on to next, and I think that's why we're able to ride the waves of a game. When you're up, you're down, it's not over. You're going to continue to play, so you don't get too excited if you have multiple great possessions, and you don't get down in the dumps if you're down by a little bit, because you can erase a lead. You can have a lead erased fast, and you can erase one fast. So they've done a really good job of just maturing in that way and having more metal to them, so to speak, in terms of that mental toughness, not to let something negative become a double negative, so to speak. And they've and they understand. Like I said, when we have that, we have a lot of pieces in our system, and our schemes are really, really good. It was the other part that we had to develop, and that, looking back, it was most likely due to just we needed time together. We needed continuity. We needed some consistency, and that was just going to take time. And hopefully now we're consistently moving up and still continuing to get better.
Coach, just piggybacking off of that question, having two of the best wins in the country, what does that do for your confidence as a coach?
Well, like I said, I mean, I've had confidence in them, but I knew we had some things we had to get better at. And ultimately, I can say things, I can show them. They have to go perform, right? And they have to do it. And that's where your real confidence comes from them performing, them preparing, them taking ownership in it. They adjust and autocorrect on the fly really well now. They come up with great suggestions and talk about things in timeouts that early in the year they had no words, So I think their confidence is growing just from their own success. You can kind of point them in the direction, you can show them the way, but they've got to paint the picture. They've got to go do it themselves, and that's the neat part about being a coach and a teacher and a leader. It's about watching young people grow, right? And it takes you back to the roots of why you do what you do, is to help people get better, grow, help them achieve something they didn't think was possible, And I don't think in November they didn't have the belief that it was possible, not a deep enough belief. Yeah, they say all the right things on the perimeter or on the surface, like everybody does, but to really go do it, you have to have a very convicted belief in what you're doing, and quite frankly, embrace how hard it's going to be, because it's not going to be easy, and you're going to have to go through hard and grow from it and get kicked in the teeth a little bit to figure out we can dig deeper. We can play even harder, and you get them to do things, and they get themselves to do things that they don't think is within them, and it actually is. So that's the neat part about watching a group grow.
You and Tom are now two of the 4 longest tenured Big Ten head coaches. Obviously, you've had a lot of great battles with them. What are the things that kind of you respect most about what that program has done over the years?
Well, I think you look at, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Purdue have been the 3 most consistent programs over the last quarter century. And, Tom took over for Coach Heathcote, who was, a great mentor for him. Matt took over for Coach Katie at Purdue, and obviously me following in Bo's footsteps. I think all three of us understand what our universities and programs are about. And the thing that I think has made all three consistently successful is you understand who you are, where you are, what works at where you are, and what doesn't work, and you stay true to that. And we've adapted. Obviously everybody talks about the offensive stuff, but the core values of the program have stayed the same. And I think the same thing for him at Michigan State. He stayed consistent and true to what he believes in and what he feels works there the best. And that's where you get consistency and sustainability. You don't get it by constantly chasing the next thing and completely ditching what you do. You just you have what you believe in on and off the court, and instead of making radical wholesale changes and throwing everything out the window, you get better at what you believe in. And not always look for an excuse to do something else. We're going to do what we do. We just got to do it better. And I think you look at all three of those you mentioned the longest tenured. I think the other one is probably Chris at Northwestern, right? He was here before, and Painter. And Chris was here before Coach Ryan retired, or at Northwestern. But those three, and I studied that a lot as an assistant. What made those programs? What made Purdue? What made Michigan State? At the time, Ohio State was pretty consistent because Thad had been there for a while. And you looked at what made those teams and programs consistent from year in and year out. And I think a lot of it's to do with you know who you are and you stay true to who you are, even when the outside world is clamoring for change and radical shifts. Hey, you understand, you stay the course, and you gotta tighten the lug nuts here, loosen the lug nuts there, change a fan belt every once in a while, but by and large you're anchored to your core.
Coach, I want to go back to that confidence piece. Just speak to the level of John Blackwell's growth and just also what Nick Boyd has just brung to this team.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job of kind of playing thunder and lightning, both on and off the court. Batman, Robin, whatever you want to use with it, because they're both different personalities. And Nick, obviously very outspoken, very vocal, very emotional, wears it on his sleeve. John can be at times, but John's more, as I've kind of compared him to a duck swimming on water, really calm above the surface, but really battling like heck or paddling like heck underneath. So there's a good balance there. I think of them working together, and that's something that had to grow and had to continue to find its harmonious position together with them on the floor, and I think they both have grown. They both have gotten to understand each other better, and blended personalities, and I think John has been good for Nick, and I think Nick has been good for John on and off the court. So that's they both bring something a little different, and they also both bring on the court in terms of performance and what they can do, but they also have different levels of vocalization off the court too, and in the huddles. Like I said, Nick wears his emotions on his sleeve. John does at times, but John is more level and maybe doesn't have the peaks, the competitive outburst, so to speak, that Nick plays with at times.
Obviously, the way the schedule fell, 5 of 7 games on the road this month, I guess when you enter a month like this, how do you view what's ahead of you?
No different than you view anything else. One game at a time. I think when you start, and it goes back to what John asked about the consistency of the program. I think when you stay consistent with your approach, home, road, neutral, playing in Madison, playing on Mars, it's not a big deal if you don't make a big deal of it, right? I don't care when we travel, where we travel. Everybody has to do it. We're going to do it our way, and we're going to prepare. You adjust here and there. Obviously, we got back really late last night. You'd be smart about today. We know what's coming Friday night. It's a heck of a team, and that's what we worry about. Where are we going? I think we go to Ohio State, right? Maybe? Okay. We'll worry about that after Friday night. And that's, I'm not just saying that to give you a short answer, Mike. It's really how we operate.
I haven't had a chance to confirm this, but I saw on the internet that you're 7-10 versus top 10 teams on the road. It might not be
That's not
7
very
and 10.
good.
It's very good. That's my point. Is that a wild stat to you?
I didn't know that. So
What do you?
I don't,
you
again, I
attribute it
think
to?
it goes back to just what I mentioned. We never say that somebody is ranked 2 in the country or 8th in the country. We never talk about where somebody's ranked, good, bad, and different. I mean, our approach is as consistent, and it may sound boring, right? It may sound, well, why wouldn't you crank them up more for this than that? Because if I crank them up for Illinois, then what do I have to do Friday night for Michigan State? If I crank them up Friday night, what do I got to do Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever we go to Columbus? Just trying to stay consistent in our process, and yeah, do I have to get, do I crank them up once in a while and maybe a halftime here or there when we have a bad first half? Yeah, there's points and times to do that, but I think the players appreciate the consistency of the approach, and they're not surprised by something. And when you're not surprised by something, and we try to minimize the ambiguity in terms of what we want to do, and I think that allows them to play aggressive, play free, play when you have to overthink things, you play slow. That's when you make mistakes. And I think just the consistency of that approach, we'll have the same amount of relatively the same approach in Prepper. We had the same approach for Illinois that we did for Campbell in the middle. We have more film now because we're later in the year, but I don't disregard non-conference opponents. I don't overcook conference opponents or ranked opponents. It's every day is important. Every game is important, and streaks, road. I mean, 7 and 10. I didn't. Shit, why aren't we 17-0? That's how I approach it. Like, we should win every game, and if we don't, then all right, what do we need to do better? Do we need to tweak some things, or we just need to do what we do better? And I think again that consistency of the approach. I know it sounds boring and it sounds like a canned answer, but shit, I watched the other guy that sat in this seat for 23 years, not only here, but it was the same. And I think that over the course of time, that just gets you really consistent. You're not going to play in a Final Four every year. You're not going to win a Big Ten championship every year. But damn it, you're going to be really good. You're going to be really consistent. You might have a bump here or there for whatever reason, but by and large, and I watched it at Platteville. We didn't have much time to really get it cranked at Milwaukee. I watched it here, and I just think, and again, I go back to, I don't know how those other teams that I mentioned, what Matt does at Purdue, what Tom does at Michigan State, but my guess is it's pretty consistent, and there's not a lot of way out here in right field, way out here in left field, day to day, year to year, week to week, and when you do that, I think everybody around you gets in that same mindset that you understand what it takes to be good every possession.
Going off of what you were saying last week with the Howard Moore doc filming or showing coming up,
Right.
kind of, are there emotions, memories that kind of come back?
Oh, yeah.
This kind of comes back
Yeah.
into the forefront.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to believe we're coming up on almost 7 years, or is 7 years in May. You as I mentioned before, I think when I had you guys as a group last week or earlier this week, whenever it was. No, it's not. It was last week. Today's only Wednesday, right? Is today Wednesday? Yeah. Today's Wednesday. Okay. All day. We live in such a fast news cycle, a 24-hour news cycle. Within 10 hours or so, they'll forget about who we played yesterday. But that tragedy can't get lost in yesterday's news cycle. And I think everyone around Howard and specifically the circle of people that have really helped push on this documentary with the intent that we don't want to let this story die. And that's not because it's a horrific story and you want to keep telling bad things, but it's also a reminder of what real life can be like, and it gives you some perspective. And obviously John Roach did a great job of putting together the documentary. It is very emotional. It was emotional filming it. When he interviewed me for it, it was emotional me watching it every time I've watched it. It just takes you back to a time that seems surreal. How the hell can something this bad happen to this family and to somebody so outgoing and so helpful to other people that has done so much for other people? So I think what the intent was, obviously, for everybody that can get out there and see that from, I know it unveils tomorrow night at Marcus Point Theater, and the panels that will go on. I'll be on the panel tomorrow night. I'll be a little busy Friday night, but other people, I know Stan Van Gundy's coming in to be on one. I know some former players are going to be up there. I think Jarrell's going to be there at some point in time. But just to, the proceeds obviously will help the Howard Moore family and help Howard with his ongoing care. It's pretty consistent full-time care that he needs, and the responsibility and burdens that's put on Howard Sr. and Trennis to care for their son and raise their grandson. It just things like you start thinking about and replaying the actual event and all the things that happened because of the event and how people's lives were forever changed. Obviously, you have Jaden and Jennifer, that lives were lost, but and that, like I said, that forever changing of lives didn't stop in May of 2019 or in June 2019 when he had his heart attack. That's ongoing every day. And I get somewhat removed from it, because not that you don't think about him, because our offices are named after the Moore family and I see it every day, but you get so caught up in today's world and that you lose sight of holy, that really happened. And I remember going through it at that time. It's like it was like I was in a bad dream. Like, when are you going to wake up from this day after day? And, that early morning phone call that I got, and then the flight to Michigan, and then everything that transpired from that. And then the day that we found out he was being rushed to UW Hospital with a heart attack, it was like, this can't be real. This can't be something this tragic doesn't happen to people. Right? This is something you see in a movie that's made up by Steven Spielberg or something. Like, life isn't this bad, and it was, and it is. But that family is as courageous and as strong as any people I've ever met on earth, and they've tried to take what was such a horrendous event and time in their lives and tried to, in any way possible, spin it to a positive to help others. And it's a great lesson for all of us. So hopefully people can get out, all you viewers and listeners out there, and those that read your stuff, that you can get out there. Obviously the 13th through the 19th. You mentioned the panels. They can go to aroadatnight.com to get more info. I don't know the exact show times. I think it's multiple times each night. And hopefully the attendance and turnout is so good that Marcus will decide to run it longer, and that would be awesome, because that would be more beneficial for ultimately for Howard and his family.
Sorry for the transition here. Austin Rapp had a really good game last night. Mm-hmm. Did you have a no moment at the end of regulation when he was reaching in?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So did the ref.
Okay.
Right in front of me. He was asking me later, what was he trying to do? I said, I don't want to know. And he admitted today that he thought we were down. He goes, I didn't want to say anything, but because we won, I'll tell you the truth, Coach. And he did back off at the very end, because I was yelling at the top of my lungs, don't foul. But and we've seen it happen before, right? It's hope, knock on wood, it hasn't happened to us, but you've seen other games where you get lost in the moment and you don't realize the score, so to speak. But yeah, that was it's a good, we didn't get burnt because of it, but it was talked about in film today. So you try to use every single opportunity to learn for next. Just like how we guarded the last play, and they've seen the Chioza play from 8-10 years ago, whenever it was. We did a much better job of angling Wagler away from, he didn't have a straight path. And they've seen that film. They've seen I think we had one with Campbell. They said it was the Campbell film that I showed it. Somebody early, did we have may launch one at the end, or we zigzag somebody maybe at halftime? Anyway, like I said, I always try to bring up lessons from the past. Anything else? All good? All right, thanks.